The desert. Of all places, why the desert? Why did God bring his children out of lush green Egypt and strand them out in the middle of the desert? And they weren't the only ones. In fact, you might find yourself, spiritually speaking, out in the desert as well. Why would God do this? I'm going to tell you right now. Hey, I'm author Michael Ramsey, and this is Michael Ramsey Books, where I show people how to transform their ordinary relationship with God into a spiritual one. If you haven't already subscribed, be sure and press the red subscribe button and ring the notification bell now. The desert. It can be a fascinating place, especially if you've never been there. I know because I grew up in the West Texas city of El Paso. But without modern conveniences like air conditioning, the desert quickly loses its luster. And after you've lived in the desert for any length of time, you realize it's nothing more than a desert. Sand, rocks, and insects of every kind, and in large quantities. There's no grass, no trees, and no hiding from the scorching sun. But spiritually speaking, just what is the desert? The answer is simple. It's the opposite of Egypt, or rather the absence of Egypt. Egypt represents the world. It's a microcosm of secular society. There are the politically connected, the politically correct, the haves and the have-nots who want to be like the haves. Everyone is chasing something, but in reality, everyone is just chasing their own tail. Egypt's leader, Pharaoh, was a self-centered, hard-hearted, oppressive dictator. He represents the evil one. His taskmasters represent the demons. Also in Egypt, there were slaves. But the slaves weren't just the slaves. Everyone in Egypt was a slave to something. Consequently, it wasn't enough for God to take his children out of Egypt. He also had to take Egypt out of his children. And that's no less true now than it was then. You see, Egypt is a place of things. Things you need. Things you think you need, things you've got to have, but all these things you possess, in reality, they possess you. And these things aren't just things. They also include your health, your wealth, your house, your job, your friends, and even your family. Basically, all your earthly possessions. But in order for us to see these things in their proper perspective, that is, God's perspective, God must be able to touch each one of these things. God who searches your heart. God who sees your innermost thoughts. God who knows the things most precious to you, the things you can't let go of, the things keeping you from Him. The rough water, it's getting rougher, and soon will be in much deeper water. Consequently, I hope you're still spending 5 minutes a day in His Word and 5 minutes a day in His presence. Because as we continue, that is, as you continue to advance spiritually, God will touch each of the things in your life. It is how He makes you strong. Strong so you can receive revelation. Strong so you'll know the power of the Spirit. Strong so you can accomplish mighty works in His name. Strong, not like the people who sit in church once a week, then are no different from everyone else the rest of the time. The desert. It's synonymous with the cross. It is how He purifies you, how He changes you. It is how He makes your spirit strong. It is the way to the promised land. The only way. The way that leads to a spiritual relationship with Jesus Christ. Question: how long should you expect your desert experience to be? Answer: Jesus spent 40 days and 40 nights in the desert. It's interesting that the nights are mentioned. You would think it would go without saying, but it's mentioned because it is a dark experience. The children of Israel spent 40 years wandering around in the desert. When you enter and how long you stay, it's up to you. But a word of caution: don't try and deal with the things yourself. Don't be tricked by the evil one into doing something or giving up something you shouldn't. Let God purify you, not you or you become a yo-yo. When you begin to let the Lord deal with all the things in your life, you'll begin to see these things in their proper perspective, God's perspective. You'll also begin to see what most priests, pastors, and biblical scholars don't, because they can't. And if you're able to see this truth, you'll be able to see the one next week. Next time, next step. Can't wait till next time. Like me on Facebook and visit me at michaelramseybooks.com.